for not signing over Grandma's house after my family tried to take it from me? Before that moment, Gavin had been leaning back in his chair like the meeting was a formality. My mother had a tissue pinched between two fingers even though she hadn't cried once. My father sat with his arms crossed, staring at the wall over my shoulder like I was a weather delay he could outwait. Malcolm Reed, my grandmother's attorney, adjusted his glasses and placed one hand on a blue folder thick enough to make the table creak. "Before anyone signs anything," Malcolm said, "Sylvia asked me to read this exactly as written." That was when the room changed. Not loudly. No thunderclap, no dramatic gasp. Just Gavin's knee stopping its bounce. My mother's tissue going still. My father's jaw tightening so hard I could hear his teeth click. I should probably back up. My name is Nora, I'm 32, and I work as a claims adjuster for an insurance company, which basically means I spend my days reading the fine print people pretend they understand. I rent a small duplex outside Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with a stubborn orange cat named Marmalade, and every Sunday night I meal prep in containers I swear I'm going to label but never do. The main people in this story are my parents, my older brother Gavin, and my grandmother Sylvia, who was the only person in my family who never treated me like I was standing in Gavin's spotlight. Gavin was 36, charming in the way people call charming when they have never had to clean up after him. He had the kind of confidence that made adults nod before he had finished a sentence. When he dropped out of a business program, my parents said he was too creative for classrooms. When he lost money in a friend's investment scheme, they said he was ambitious and got unlucky. When he forgot birthdays, showed up late, borrowed money, or made promises that evaporated by Monday morning, he was under pressure. When I said no to anything, I was cold. That was our family math. Gavin's emergencies were emergencies. Mine were character building. My mother, Patricia, had a soft voice she used like bubble wrap around a brick. She could make a demand sound like a prayer request. "Nora, honey, can you be the bigger person?" Usually meant, "Nora, please absorb the consequences of someone else's behavior." My father, Walter, was quieter. He didn't yell much. He didn't have to. He had a gift for looking disappointed in a way that made you feel like you had left a child at a gas station. And then there was Grandma Sylvia. Her house was a modest 1940s brick Cape Cod in an older neighborhood just outside Lancaster. The kind of place with narrow driveways, deep front porches, and maples that dumped leaves like they were trying to bury the street. The radiators clanked in winter. The screened back porch had one corner where the floor dipped. The kitchen always smelled faintly like cinnamon, coffee, and Murphy oil soap, no matter how long it had been since anyone had cleaned. It wasn't a mansion. It didn't have a pool or a gate or some secret bank vault in the basement. It was 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a creaky staircase, and a little garden where Sylvia grew tomatoes, basil, and marigolds because she said marigolds kept pests away and made nosy neighbors look cheerful. But the neighborhood had become desirable. Developers had started buying older homes nearby, tearing them down or gutting them into rentals with gray floors and black fixtures. Suddenly houses like Sylvia's were opportunities, which is a polite real estate word for something somebody loved that somebody else wants to profit from. To me, it wasn't an opportunity. It was where Grandma kept a chipped blue mug for her tea, where she stored recipe cards in a tin with faded roses on it, where she called me Nora Girl even after I was old enough to have crow's feet. It was the only place in my family where I didn't have to perform being okay. Over the last few years of her life, Sylvia slowed down in small ways before she slowed down in big ones. First it was the grocery bags getting too heavy. Then the pharmacy labels getting too small. Then the Medicare explanation of benefits letters piling up on the kitchen table because, in her words, they write those things like they're hiding a raccoon in there. Because I worked remotely most days and lived 15 minutes away, I became the default person. I picked up prescriptions. I drove her to appointments. I called the insurance company when a claim got tangled. I replaced batteries in her smoke detectors, unclogged the bathroom sink, and sat on hold with Medicare long enough to memorize the flute music. Gavin visited, too, technically. He would come by every couple of months with pastries from someplace in the city, kiss Grandma on the forehead, take a photo with her for Facebook, and leave before the dishes were done. My mother would comment, "Such a good grandson," under the post with 3 heart emojis. I came with trash bags and pill organizers. I don't say that because I hated doing it. I didn't. Sylvia never made me feel used. She would pat the chair beside her and say, "Sit down before you start fixing the whole world." Then she would make me coffee even when her hands shook a little, and we would split toast at her kitchen table. She noticed things. She noticed when I was tired. She noticed when my mother called me 3 times during a visit and I didn't answer. She noticed when Gavin asked if she had thought about simplifying the house, which was Gavin's code for turning someone else's property into a plan. "Your brother has a salesman voice," she told me once, watching him leave through the front window. "He's in wellness consulting now," I said. "That is what I mean." Gavin had invested in a boutique gym franchise the year before, one of those places with eucalyptus towels and classes named after verbs. He talked about it like he was building a movement. Then the location never opened, the partners disappeared into lawyer emails, and suddenly he was restructuring. My parents acted like this was heroic. I heard from a cousin that it was debt. Sylvia heard things too. More than people thought. When her furnace went out that January, I paid the emergency repair bill because the house was freezing and the technician wanted half up front. It was $1,480 I absolutely did not have sitting around for fun. Sylvia tried to write me a check from the little desk in her hallway, but I told her we could settle it later. "No," she said, looking at me over her glasses. "We settle things while people are alive. Afterward, everyone becomes a historian." I laughed then. I didn't know she was warning me. Grandma died in early October, on a gray Tuesday morning after a short hospital stay that somehow felt both sudden and a long time coming. I was the one who got the call. I was the one who drove to the hospital with my hair still wet and one shoe untied. I sat beside her after, holding her hand because it still looked like her hand, even though she wasn't there anymore. My mother arrived with my father 40 minutes later. Gavin came after lunch. He hugged me in the hallway and said, "You okay?" in the tone of someone checking whether a meeting had started. The funeral was small. Church ladies brought casseroles. Mrs. Calder, a retired school librarian Sylvia liked, cried into a napkin and told me my grandmother had once repaired the hem of her coat during a snowstorm. My mother wore black and accepted condolences like she was receiving guests at a formal tea. Gavin gave a short speech about legacy. He used that word 3 times. 2 days after the funeral, the family group chat, which was called Family Stuff because imagination runs deep in our bloodline, lit up while I was eating cold pasta over my sink. "Patricia, we need to handle the house quickly before outsiders get involved." "Walter, your mother would have wanted us to be practical." "Gavin, let's all get on the same page before lawyers turn this into a circus." I stared at the messages with my fork halfway to my mouth. "Nora, what outsiders?" "Patricia, don't start, honey. You know what I mean." I did not know what she meant, which usually meant she meant something she didn't want to say in writing. That Sunday, my parents asked me to come for dinner. My mother made pot roast, which in our family was not a meal. It was a negotiation tactic. The dining room smelled like onions and red wine, and the table was set with the good plates no one liked because the rims were too wide. Gavin was already there when I arrived, wearing a navy sweater and scrolling through his phone. His wife and kids were not with him. That should have told me something. Gavin brought his kids when he wanted sympathy. He came alone when he wanted control. We ate for 10 minutes while everyone pretended this was dinner. Then Gavin wiped his mouth with a napkin and said, "So I've been thinking about Grandma's place." I put down my fork. "It's too much for Mom to deal with," he continued. "And Dad doesn't need the stress. I can take over the house, renovate it, keep it in the family. The kids should have roots, you know? Somewhere with history." The kids lived in a 4-bedroom house in Westchester with a finished basement and a trampoline. "Take over how?" I asked. My mother gave me a look that meant I was using the wrong tone. "Don't make it sound ugly," she said. "Your brother is offering to help." Gavin smiled. "Exactly. I'm not trying to profit here. I'm trying to preserve Grandma's legacy." I had processed enough insurance claims to know people mention legacy when numbers are nearby. My mother reached beside her chair and pulled a folded packet from a manila envelope. She slid it across the table toward me with 2 fingers like it might bite. "It's not a big thing," she said. "It just says you're not going to make this ugly." The top page was folded down so I couldn't see the title. I unfolded it. Waiver of claim. Under that, in smaller print, consent to transfer of property interest. I read the first paragraph slowly. My job has made me annoying at restaurants because I read the fine print on coupons, hotel confirmations, parking signs, everything. People call it paranoia until it saves them a deductible. This was not a simple acknowledgement. It wasn't even close. It said I waived any present or future claim, objection, interest or challenge relating to Sylvia's real property, estate assets, transfers, conveyances, or beneficiary designations. I looked up. Gavin's smile had gone tight. Where did this come from? I asked. It's standard, he said. Standard from who? My father's side. Not a normal sigh. The kind that was meant to make everyone at the table understand I had disappointed him again. Nora, he said, your grandmother wanted peace. If it's nothing, I said, keeping my voice level, then nobody should mind me reading it. Come on, Gavin said. Don't make this your personality. My mother reached for my hand. I moved it to my lap before she got there. I just don't understand why you would do this to us after everything we are already going through, she said. Do what? Read a document before signing it. Turn death into money, she said softly. There it was. The soft voice. The brick. I folded the packet and put it in my purse. I'll review it, I said. Gavin leaned forward. No, Nora. We need this done. The longer we wait, the more complicated it gets. Then I guess everyone should be careful, I said. My father's face hardened. This isn't the daughter we raised. I almost laughed, which would not have helped, because he was right in one way. The daughter they raised would have signed it just to get out of that room. I drove home with my hands clamped around the steering wheel and my phone buzzing in the cup holder. By the time I pulled into my duplex driveway, family stuff had become a courtroom where everyone was both prosecutor and victim. Gavin, you're really going to drag this out? Nora, I'm not signing anything I haven't reviewed. Patricia, this is exactly what your grandmother didn't want. Gavin, you mean Grandma didn't want me protecting the family house? Weird take. Walter, sometimes being right matters less than being decent. Gavin, you don't even have kids. What are you going to do, give the cat a bedroom? I sat in my car under the weak porch light and read that last one twice. Marmalade was visible in the front window, his orange face pressed against the glass like a tiny judgmental landlord. I wanted to answer. I wanted to type something sharp enough to make Gavin feel even a fraction of what he had made me feel. Instead, I took screenshots. That sounds cold, maybe, but documentation is my nervous system. At work, if something isn't timestamped, saved as a PDF, and filed where a sleep-deprived stranger can find it 6 months later, it basically didn't happen. So I screenshotted the entire thread, saved the document as photos, emailed everything to myself, and put the original packet in a folder on my desk labeled Sylvia because apparently I had inherited my grandmother's love of labels. The next morning, I brought my laptop to a coffee shop before work and read the waiver again. It referenced a private transfer. It referenced consent. It referenced anticipated conveyance. It did not reference a will, a probate case, or Malcolm Reed, whose name I knew because Sylvia had mentioned him once when she updated her medical power of attorney. By lunch, I had a headache behind my right eye. My coworker Jenna found me in the break room staring at a yogurt I had not opened. Jenna was 33, direct, and allergic to family nonsense. She was also the person who once told our supervisor, "Urgent is not a scheduling strategy," and somehow kept her job. "You look like a haunted filing cabinet," she said. I showed her the messages and gave her the short version. She read in silence, then looked up. "Why is everyone rushing before the lawyer meeting?" "Because they say lawyers make things complicated." "Girl, people who are right don't usually need you to sign something before you can breathe." I knew that. I did. But sometimes knowing a thing and letting yourself believe it are different chores. After work, I drove to Sylvia's house. The late afternoon light made the brick look warm and tired. There were still 2 sympathy cards tucked in the mail slot. I used my key and stepped inside. The house smelled closed up. Dust, old wood, and the faint cinnamon that seemed built into the walls. I stood in the front hall for a minute listening to the radiator tick even though the heat was off, and grief came up so fast I had to put a hand on the wall. Then I went to the kitchen cabinet beside the stove. Sylvia kept folders there. Always had. Home insurance, taxes, furnace, medical, recipes. She labeled them with black marker on white tabs. She alphabetized canned soup. She did not misplace tax papers. The house folder was gone. So were the furnace invoices, the most recent county tax bill, and a stack of receipts I knew had been clipped together because I had put them there myself after the roof patch in June. The drawer beneath the cabinet hung slightly crooked, like someone had pulled it too hard. Sylvia's recipe tin had been moved from the counter to the windowsill. That made me angrier than the missing papers. The recipe tin was not paperwork. It was hers. I searched for nearly an hour. Behind the microwave I found one county tax notice folded in half, probably slipped down and missed. I took a picture of it. Then I sat at the kitchen table in the chair that still had the cushion flattened by Sylvia's body and called Malcolm Reed's office. His receptionist sounded like she had handled every kind of family disaster and ranked mine somewhere around a Tuesday. "Mr. Reed can return your call tomorrow," she said. "Please tell him it's Nora," I said. "Sylvia's granddaughter." There was a pause. "Hold please." Malcolm came on the line less than a minute later. "Miss Nora," he said, his voice calm and dry. "I was expecting to hear from you." My throat tightened. "You were. Your grandmother was very specific. Have you signed anything?" "No." "Good. I'm going to say this once. Do not sign anything your family gives you." I closed my eyes. He continued, "Please bring all communications, copies of any documents presented to you, and any information about access to the property to our scheduled meeting Friday. Until then, avoid confrontation where possible. Communicate in writing when you must." "Is something wrong?" "Several things may be wrong," he said. "But I prefer paper to adjectives. Bring me paper." For the first time since the funeral I smiled. The next day Gavin called me 3 times. I let it go to voicemail. He did not leave messages, because Gavin was smart enough to be mean only where he could later claim tone was misunderstood. My mother texted Bible verses about unity, and one quote about greed from a website that also sold scented candles. I answered only once. "Patricia, your brother has more responsibilities. I wish you could see beyond yourself. Nora, please put any requests about Grandma's estate or house in writing. Patricia, listen to yourself. Estate. You sound like a stranger. Nora, in writing please." That evening I stopped by Sylvia's house again to check the mail. A white pickup was in the driveway. Gavin stood on the front walk with a man in a fleece jacket and work boots, pointing at the roofline like he was hosting a renovation show. I parked at the curb and got out. Gavin saw me and smiled too big. "Hey, didn't know you were coming by." "I have a key," I said. The contractor looked from him to me and immediately developed the expression of a man who regretted every choice that had led him to this driveway. "We're just getting estimates," Gavin said. "No big deal." "For what?" "Basic updates. Paint kitchen, maybe opening that wall." I looked at the wall through the front window, the wall where Sylvia had hung framed school pictures and a cross-stitch that said "Bloom where you are planted." "Who authorized this?" I asked. Gavin laughed once. "Probate is basically handled." "Handled by who?" "Because Grandma's actual attorney hasn't said that." The contractor shifted his clipboard against his chest. "I can come back another time." "No need," I said, looking at him, not Gavin. "The property isn't available for work or estimates right now." Gavin stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Don't embarrass me in front of people." "Then stop doing embarrassing things in front of people." His face changed. The charm slid off so quickly I wondered how often other people got to see what lived underneath it. "You have no idea what you're messing with," he said. I wanted to ask what that meant. I wanted to push until he slipped. But Malcolm's voice was in my head. Paper over adjectives. So I took a photo of the truck's plate after they left, forwarded it to Malcolm, and drove to Home Depot to buy temporary cameras for the front and back doors. Malcolm confirmed by email that, given Sylvia's recorded instructions and my role regarding the property pending administration, I could secure the house against unauthorized access. He also told me he would handle formal notices. I changed the locks the next morning with a locksmith who smelled like peppermint gum, and talked to Marmalade through my phone camera when I checked on him. Then I got quiet. I stopped defending myself in the group chat. I stopped explaining. I stopped trying to make people who benefited from misunderstanding me suddenly become fair. When Gavin texted, I replied with one sentence or not at all. When Mom called, I let it ring. When Dad sent, think carefully about what kind of person you want to be. I saved it as a PDF. Silence makes controlling people nervous. I learned that fast. By Friday, I had a folder of my own. Screenshots, the waiver packet, photos of the missing cabinet area, the contractor's plate, call logs, receipts for Sylvia's groceries and prescriptions, the furnace invoice, and a small spreadsheet because I am who I am. Malcolm Reed's office was in a converted row house downtown with bad parking, old trim, and a waiting room full of plants that looked personally committed to surviving. His receptionist recognized the family tension immediately. She gave me a look that said she had seen Thanksgiving weaponized before. Gavin arrived in a blazer. My mother had tissues. My father had his arms crossed before he sat down. Malcolm invited us into a conference room with a long table and a window overlooking a brick wall. He was 58, maybe, with silver hair, a narrow face, and the calm of a man who had made a career out of watching people discover consequences. Gavin started before anyone else could. "Mr. Reed, I think we all want this simple," he said. "Nora got emotional, which is understandable, but we're ready to move forward as a family." Malcolm opened a legal pad. "That is one characterization." My mother squeezed her tissue. "We just want to honor my mother's wishes." "So do I," Malcolm said. Gavin turned to me with the generous smile he used in public. "Nobody wants to punish you. You can still fix this today." That was how I knew punishment was exactly what they had discussed. Malcolm folded his hands. "For clarity, no one will be signing the packet presented to Nora at your family dinner. That document was neither prepared nor approved by this office." My mother's eyes flicked to Gavin. It was tiny. If I hadn't spent my adult life reading faces and recorded statements, I might have missed it. Gavin sat straighter. "It was just to avoid conflict. A waiver of claim and consent to transfer property interest is not just anything," Malcolm said. "Words have jobs." Those words were doing several. I looked down so nobody would see my mouth twitch. Malcolm lifted the blue folder. "Sylvia maintained an instruction file with this office," he said. "She updated her estate plan 18 months before her death. The current will leaves personal property as listed in her memorandum, small cash gifts as specified, and appoints a neutral administrator. The house was handled separately through a recorded transfer on death deed, filed with the county recorder's office." Gavin blinked. "A what?" "A transfer on death deed," Malcolm said. "Upon Sylvia's death, title transfers outside probate to the named beneficiary, subject to proper filings. The named beneficiary is Nora." The room went so quiet I could hear the receptionist typing through the wall. My mother said, "No. Just one word. Flat and ugly." My father leaned forward. "There must be an older will." "There are older documents," Malcolm said. "They are not controlling." Sylvia anticipated that objection. Gavin let out a laugh that didn't sound like him. "Grandma wouldn't do that. She knew I had kids. She knew the house should stay with family." "It is staying with family," Malcolm said. My mother turned toward me. "Did you know about this?" I shook my head. "No." She didn't believe me. That stung even then. Especially then. Malcolm removed a sealed envelope from the folder. My name was written on the front in Sylvia's handwriting. Sylvia instructed me to read portions aloud if there was pressure placed on Nora regarding the house, he said. "Given the communications and documents I have received, that condition is met." "This is ridiculous," Gavin said. Malcolm glanced at him. "You may want to let me finish before deciding which parts are ridiculous." Then he opened the letter. His voice was even careful. He did not perform it. That made it worse somehow. Better too. "Nora girl," he read, and I had to press my thumb hard into my palm. "If this is being read in a room with your mother, Walter, and Gavin, then I am sorry they made it necessary. I hoped grief might soften people. I planned in case it did not." My mother made a small wounded sound. Malcolm continued. I am not leaving Nora the house because she needs it most. I am leaving it to her because she loved me without turning me into an opportunity. She came when there was no camera. She paid bills I told her not to pay. She learned which pharmacy clerk knew my name. She sat with me when I was afraid. And did not announce it later as sacrifice. My vision blurred. I stared at the grain of the table until it steadied. Gavin has asked me more than once about selling, transferring, or simplifying the house. Patricia has asked where I keep documents she did not need. Walter signed a statement saying I intended Gavin to manage the property. That statement is false. I did not ask for it, approve it, or agree with it. My father went red from his collar up. Malcolm, read on. A family that only calls something love when Nora gives it away is not a family asking for love. It is asking for tribute. I have watched Nora pay tribute long enough. My mother started crying then. Real tears or useful ones, I honestly couldn't tell anymore. Mom would never write that, she whispered. Malcolm placed the letter flat on the table. Sylvia wrote this in my office. I witnessed it. My assistant notarized related documents the same day. Gavin stood halfway, then sat back down when nobody moved with him. This is manipulation, he said. No, Malcolm said. This is planning. Manipulation is something else, and Sylvia was concerned about that as well. He removed another stack from the blue folder. Sylvia provided this office with copies of text messages, notes regarding visits, bank records, and screenshots from her front door camera. She indicated that Patricia had begun collecting certain mail before Sylvia reviewed it. She also provided an unsigned quitclaim deed. She stated Gavin urged her to sign after telling her it would make things easier later. My mother went pale when he said camera. Sylvia was old, not absent. I heard Malcolm say that later, but in that moment I thought it first. He slid copies across the table. I saw one screenshot from the front door camera. Gavin on the porch holding a folder looking annoyed. Another showed my mother leaving with a bundle of mail tucked under her arm. There were notes in Sylvia's handwriting, shaky but legible. Patricia came 3:15. Took county notice. Said she would explain later. Did not return it. Gavin brought deed. Said Nora wouldn't care. I care. I couldn't breathe right. For months I had wondered if I was being suspicious because grief had made me raw. I wasn't raw. I was late. Gavin pointed at the papers. None of that proves anything. I was trying to help. Help who? I asked quietly. Everyone looked at me. It was the first thing I had said since the deed was revealed. Gavin's face twisted. Don't start acting like some innocent victim. You think you're better because you brought groceries. I asked who you were helping. He slapped a hand on the table. My mother flinched. Malcolm did not. You don't get it, Gavin said. I already have people waiting on this. There it was. My father turned to him. Gavin. But Gavin was past listening. Do you know what happens if this falls through? He said to me. Do you know how much I've put on the line? That neighborhood is hot right now. I had a developer ready to move as soon as the paperwork cleared. You don't even want the house. You just don't want me to have it. The words hung there, ugly and useful. Malcolm picked up his pen and wrote something on his pad. Gavin saw it and tried to recover. I was exploring options. For everyone. You promised a property you did not own to a developer, Malcolm said. I didn't promise. You said you had people waiting. That is not a legal argument, Gavin started to say. Mr. Gavin, Malcolm interrupted, calm as a closed door. I would strongly recommend you stop improving the record. My mother covered her face. My father stared at the table like he might find a different family carved into it. Malcolm turned one page in the folder. There is another matter. Sylvia's will included a conditional cash gift to Gavin. The condition was that he not challenge the estate plan, attempt unauthorized control over the house, pressure Nora to waive any rights, or interfere with administration. Based on the document presented to Nora, the contractor visit, and the communications provided, it is my position that the condition has been violated. The administrator will be advised accordingly. Gavin's mouth opened, closed, opened again. You can't just take that, he said. I am taking nothing, Malcolm said. Sylvia set the condition. Your conduct triggered it. My father finally spoke. This is going too far. Malcolm looked at him. Your disappointment is not a legal claim. It wasn't said cruelly. That almost made it sharper. He continued. Going forward, no one is to enter the property without Nora's written permission. No contractors, agents, developers, or third parties are to be contacted regarding the property by anyone other than Nora or her authorized representative. Further attempts to pressure, harass, or misrepresent ownership may result in formal legal action. I will send written notice by end of day. My mother looked at me then, not with sadness, with accusation. Are you happy? She asked. Is this what you wanted? To humiliate your family? I thought about all the years I had apologized for noticing patterns. All the times I had swallowed a comment because peace was easier if I made myself small enough to fit inside someone else's version of events. All the times Sylvia had watched me do it and frowned into her tea. No, I said. This is what Grandma wanted documented. The meeting ended with chairs scraping and papers being gathered too loudly. Gavin left first, phone already in his hand. My father followed him. My mother lingered in the doorway. She was my mother, she said. I know. You turned her against us. That one almost got through. Not because it was true, but because the child in me still wanted my mother to choose me if I just explained myself well enough. Picked up my purse. No, Mom, I said. Grandma saw the division long before the will. She just stopped pretending it wasn't there. Her face hardened. You'll regret this when you're alone. I've been alone in this family for a long time, I said. At least now the paperwork matches. She left without answering. The weeks after that were not peaceful, but they were clear. There is a difference. Malcolm sent the notices. Gavin's attorney sent one aggressive letter full of phrases like undue influence and suspicious circumstances, then went quiet after Malcolm responded with the recorded deed, Sylvia's letter, the camera screenshots, and Gavin's text messages. The developer deal collapsed. I learned this because Gavin sent me one final message from a number I hadn't blocked yet. Gavin, hope you're proud. You didn't just ruin this for me. You ruined it for my kids. I stared at it for a while. Then I blocked him too. Patricia tried a different route. She left voicemails that started soft and ended sharp. Nora, please call me. This has gone too far. Then 2 days later. I hope that house keeps you warm when you realize what you've done. Walter sent one text. Walter. Family should come before property. I typed 3 different replies and deleted all of them. Then I sent. Nora, I agree. That is why what you all did hurt. He did not answer. For a while I thought I had to decide right away what to do with the house. Move in. Sell it. Leave it empty. Turn it into something symbolic enough that everyone would understand my moral position. Grief makes you think every decision needs to become a monument. Then I stood in Sylvia's kitchen one Saturday morning, surrounded by labeled folders Malcolm had returned, and realized I didn't want to perform for anyone anymore. I didn't move in. Not then. My life was still at the duplex, with marmalade shedding on my sofa and my neighbor playing jazz too loudly on Thursdays. Sylvia's house needed someone in it. Someone who would open windows, water plants, and not talk about knocking down walls. So I called Mrs. Calder. She answered on the 3rd ring. Nora, dear. Would you ever want to rent a house with loud radiators and a stubborn back door? I asked. There was a pause. Then she laughed and started crying at the same time. Mrs. Calder had sold her place the year before, and hated her apartment complex. I rented Sylvia's house to her at a fair rate, below what the market would have squeezed out of it but enough to cover taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Malcolm reviewed the lease. I kept the garden. I kept the blue mug. I kept the recipe tin on the kitchen counter where it belonged. The best revenge wasn't watching Gavin lose the house. It was refusing to become greedy just because they were. Christmas Eve came cold and clear, with frost silvering the porch railings. Mrs. Calder was visiting her sister in Ohio, and she told me to use the house if I wanted. Sylvia would fuss if it sat empty on Christmas, she said. So I brought marmalade over in his carrier, which he objected to with the passion of a wrongfully imprisoned man. I set him near the radiator, and within 5 minutes he was asleep like the place had always belonged to him. I made coffee in Sylvia's old percolator because I had never figured out how she made it taste better than mine. Then I opened the recipe tin and found the card for cinnamon rolls. Her handwriting leaned to the right, firm and practical. More cinnamon than you think. Butter the pan, Nora girl. Corners count. I stood there with flour on my shirt, the kitchen warm around me, the radiator clanking, marmalade snoring like a tiny engine. My phone was quiet. Gavin was blocked. My parents were on limited contact, which meant I answered when I chose and ended conversations when guilt entered the room. The cinnamon rolls came out uneven. One corner brown too much. Sylvia would have blamed the oven and eaten that one herself. I put them on the counter to cool and made tea in the chipped blue mug. Outside, the garden was asleep under winter dirt. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon, coffee, and Murphy oil soap. For the first time in my life, peace didn't feel like something I had to earn by disappearing. It was just there, in a warm kitchen that had my grandmother's handwriting in it, in a house she had protected before I understood I deserved protecting too. And when I locked the door behind me that night, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was finally carrying the right thing forward. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.